I know a lot of people have been anticipating the new Mortal Kombat movie. It's both in theaters and on HBO Max, but is it worth checking out? MMA fighter Cole Young seeks out Earth's greatest champions in order to stand against the enemies of Outworld in a high-stakes battle for the universe. So really there are a couple of questions that need to be answered about this movie. First, for non-game players or those unfamiliar with the game, does this provide a compelling and cohesive story? And then, how are the fights? Do we see fatalities? Does anyone say, "Finish him"? Do we get the blood and gore that the video game delivers? Kind of like watching Godzilla vs. Kong, the story takes more of a backseat to what we actually want to see. And let's be honest, we really just want to watch a bunch of fights with some crazy violence. After all, this is now rated R, so they can up the blood, guts, and overall carnage. In this, the story does take a backseat. There's a group of people on Earth that have this mark on them to symbolize that they are the chosen ones to defend the Earth realm from the Outworld. The Outworld has some baddies in it, and they fight dirty. But if they can win another tournament called Mortal Kombat, then they'll be able to take over the Earth. The first half of the movie is spent collecting the small amount of Earth players, and there's not too much that we learn about them that's overly necessary to the plot. But we know even less about the baddies. But I think that's okay. I don't need to know their histories, I just want to watch them battle. And when we get the fights, they can be a lot of fun. They're typically brutal and bloody, and some even made me cringe a bit because of how violent it was, but I was also cheering it on. There are a handful of battles, and one large one in particular was really fun to watch. It had a lot of excitement as the camera cut back and forth between the pairings of combatants. It felt tense and full of energy, making it what I had hoped to see when fights occurred. There were some times during the action where it looked like you can almost see the wires that pull the actors around the screen. They were being yanked and thrown, and while it's exciting, it also had some very fake moments to it. The special effects at times also leave something to be desired, but when the gore and violence get going, it's exactly what we want from the movie. Now the blood most of the time is not totally realistic, but that's not really a concern as long as they keep it flowing. But when there weren't fights going on, we have to sit through exposition and dialogue. And the dialogue is pretty terrible. It's clipped and unnatural, and a lot of the deliveries are just laughably bad. There were many times where I just wished the characters would shut up and have the scene fast forward so we could get to another fight. Now I liked the character designs and the setup for how they discover what they can do power-wise. Kano for me rode the line between sarcastic and wildly annoying, and when he discovered what he could do, I found that to be a good addition to how the film can use it for the fight scenes. Cole Young was cool, and I really did like his character arc. We see a guy who looks to be down on his luck and not even that good of a fighter, but it's hinted at that he was once great. So we get to watch him grow through his defeat and regain his confidence, and that was nice. Jax and Sonya Blade have a good dynamic, and I like that they have a history together to give their characters a little emotional pull, at least to each other. Now from the baddie side, we get almost no development or background, except for Sub-Zero. And a lot of him was shown in the trailer and the first 7-minute scene that they released prior to the movie coming out. I enjoyed the fight scenes he's in, and he came across as a pretty formidable adversary. I do wish we could have had more fight scenes between the bad and the good guys. There's really only one huge fight, and then a smaller battle between the two sides. And the bad guys have some very intriguing characters that I wanted to just watch them battle it out for longer. There's Melina and Natara, and as well as Goro, and they brought some intimidating looks and power which only made me want to watch them more. So this is pretty much a toss-up for me. I mean, I loved the action. When the fights happened, it delivered exactly what I was looking for, and it didn't shy away from the violence and the gore. It also included some fun fatalities, which only added to the gory goodness. But the story and the characters were overall underwhelming. They were further hampered by just the terrible dialogue. The scenes that didn't involve action only made me long for another fight scene. And thankfully, I'd be rewarded with one without having to wait an interminable amount of time. Because this is available both in theaters and on HBO Max, I would watch it at home and save the money. I'm not sure the visuals are enough of a spectacle to make the investment of seeing it on the big screen worth it. I think if you're a fan of the game, you're going to enjoy this for finally delivering just some wonderful video game violence. If you're not a fan of the game and are just looking for an escape and you're not too worried about story or character development, this isn't a terrible way to spend an hour and 50 minutes, especially if you enjoy violent movies. There's no sexual nudity, a lot of profanity, and a ton of bloody and gory violence. I give Mortal Kombat 3 out of 5 couches. So have you been looking forward to this? Who's your go-to character if you play the game? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.